Thomas Elric had been talking to himself for so long that the ventilation unit above his head had started answering back. Not in words, of course. That would have been deeply concerning, even by the station's crumbling standards. No, it just hissed in short, judgmental bursts every time he muttered something especially pathetic, which, as luck would have it, was often. He had been assigned to the lower decks of Kepler's Veil, a deep space research station with the architectural charm of a drop toaster and the structural integrity of an old sock. His official title was Auxiliary Systems Maintenance Officer, Grade C, which was a bureaucratic way of saying, fix whatever stops humming and don't ask questions. He wiped a smear of conductive gel from his cheek with the back of his glove and squinted at the inert bundle of cables sprawled like digital entrails across the floor. Somewhere in that mess was the faulty junction that had been screwing with the gravity alignment in Bay 7, causing forklifts to float gently upward during cargo transfer. This would have been a whimsical spectacle if not for the shrieking and mild concussions. "You're a real piece of work, you know that," he told the cable. It offered no response, not even a hiss. Somewhere behind him, Aurelia moved silently past the entryway. She had the kind of presence that made noise feel inappropriate, like talking during a lunar eclipse or farting in a cathedral. Thomas didn't turn. He was extremely committed to pretending she didn't exist, at least not in a way that made his stomach do that weird, gravity-defying tumble. Aurelia was one of the alien specialists assigned to decipher the deep signal pings coming from the planetary crust. Her people had long ears like wind chimes and the kind of calm expression you'd expect from someone who had already foreseen your awkward pickup line and decided not to judge you too harshly for it. She floated when she walked, not literally, but the effect was close enough that Thomas had once tried to calculate whether it was due to magnetic soles, gravitational redistribution, or sheer personal elegance. She passed again, holding a stack of data slates, which probably contained knowledge of ancient civilizations or quantum harmonics or the exact mathematical formula for his romantic inadequacy. He waited until she was safely out of earshot, probably halfway to the linguistics bay, and muttered just to himself, "I'd be honored to be with you." It wasn't even a sentence, really, more like an errant fragment of honesty spilled accidentally into the vacuum of an empty corridor. He smiled to himself, then winced, then kicked the cable with all the courage of a man whose boots were not, in fact, insulated against accidental discharge. The cable fizzed, the lights dimmed. A low electronic groan echoed through the vent system, like the sigh of a particularly disappointed god. Then he heard her voice. "It would be an honor to be with you." Tomas froze, arm halfway through a curse gesture. She stood behind him, not in the hallway, not in his imagination, right behind him, holding her slates, looking directly at him with an expression that could have been gentle amusement or simply her neutral facial setting. He stared. She stared. The cable, now sparking faintly, made a small popping sound, as if to say, "You're on your own, buddy." He said, then made a noise that sounded like a deflating bagpipe. "Sorry, I didn't mean. That was directed at—" He pointed vaguely at the cable, then at his own face, then at the floor. "Not you, or rather, no, not you, just not to you." Aurelia tilted her head slightly. "Is this a human courtship ritual? Talking to objects while avoiding eye contact?" "No," Tomas said, then reconsidered. "Actually, yes. In my case, yes. It's a very niche tradition, very ceremonial, requires great embarrassment, sometimes stubbing of toes." She blinked once slowly. "I see. I'm going to sit down now," Tomas announced to nobody in particular, and promptly missed the crate behind him by 3 inches. She didn't laugh, not outwardly, but one ear twitched, just barely. It might have been his imagination. "I'm glad you said it," she continued, setting her slates down beside him. "I was unsure how to approach the subject without breaching interspecies professional decorum." He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a man trying to update his emotional firmware. "You mean, you were thinking the same thing?" "Similar," she said, "though I imagined it with less stammering and more declarative syntax." Tomas exhaled so hard he briefly lost peripheral vision. "Right, cool, totally. Declarative syntax is overrated anyway." She looked at the cable. Did you fix it? No, Tomas said. But I fell in love while trying. That counts as productive, right? She picked up the cable and, with 3 precise twists and a hum that wasn't quite a word, reconnected it. The lights returned to full brightness. The station hummed as if in reluctant approval. Thomas stared. Okay. Yeah, you're amazing. That's fine. That's just fine. Cool. No insecurity flare-up here. I have read that humor is an effective human defense mechanism, she said, handing him the reassembled cable coil. Is this your version? I have 12, Thomas said. This one is called Accidental Comedian During Nervous Breakdown. The next one's Overly Confident Tech Guy Who Trips Over Wires. Will I get to see them all? He looked up at her. She wasn't smiling, but somehow she was. You might, he said, heart beating like a badly tuned sensor array. You just might. Above them, the station vent hissed again. This time, Thomas was pretty sure it was laughing. Thomas tried to play it cool for approximately 13 hours. During this time, he executed a variety of covert operations to avoid further direct contact with Aralaya. These included rerouting his lunch schedule, ducking behind hydroponic barrels, and once faking a malfunction in his ankle joint to hobble dramatically past the medbay, just in case she was watching and thought vulnerability was attractive. She wasn't. Watching, that is. At least not that he could tell, which somehow made things worse. His bunkmate, Kev, a gelatinous engineer from Gliesa 4, who resembled a sentient stress ball, eventually confronted him with a simple but pointed observation. You smell like fried coolant and desperation, Kev gurgled, bouncing gently in disapproval. Go talk to her again, or I'll do it for you, and you know how literal I get. Thomas groaned into his hands. She probably regrets saying it. Maybe she was joking, or maybe it was a linguistic glitch. Aralaya once said, "Good morning" to a dead star. I can't trust anything that elegant. Kev narrowed his 2 upper eyebulbs. You've been talking to your protein bar for 10 minutes. That's not elegance. That's loneliness. He sighed. Fine. I'll talk to her. Just in a professional context. Super normal. Super casual. No one will even notice the faint odor of emotional combustion. That evening, Thomas made his way to the linguistics bay, armed with a carefully vague maintenance form and a wrench he didn't need. The door slid open with a whisper, revealing the room's usual chaos. Luminous glyphs floating midair, sound wave diagrams on every surface, and Aralaya sitting cross-legged in a gravity-neutral chair that bobbed slightly whenever she shifted. She looked up, ears alert. Is the ventilation here malfunctioning? Nope, it's functioning perfectly, Thomas said too quickly. Just regular system check. Very important. Wrench things. She blinked. Your wrench is a dental calibrator. It has multiple uses in the hands of a creative technician, Tomas said with a straight face. She stared at him for a moment, then gestured to the console beside her. The audio pulse logs are misaligned. I suspect a residual echo from the signal core. Finally, something I can actually fix without declaring my feelings to a junction box. Do you frequently confess to inanimate objects? Only the ones that hurt me. She turned back to the screen. The waveform distortion began shortly after yesterday's incident, possibly related to emotional resonance? Tomas hesitated. You mean like a literal frequency shift from feelings? Possibly. My people have long studied the vibrational interfaces between thought and subspace communication. Emotions are not entirely metaphorical constructs, Thomas. They have echoes. I knew my ex's fury had a mass, he muttered. She once cracked a window by sighing too hard. He leaned over the console and pulled up the distortion logs. Sure enough, there it was. An irregular spike, like a skipped heartbeat, timed exactly at the moment he'd made his accidental confession. You think that caused a ripple in a linguistics matrix? You were very loud, Aralaya said. I whispered. Internally loud then. He turned toward her, trying not to look directly at her shimmering eyes or the way her ear twitched when she smirked, which he now understood was a smirk, not a muscular malfunction. Okay, he said. So what happens if the station keeps picking up on these emotional harmonics? She tapped a panel. It could destabilize our translation algorithms, create misinterpretations, perhaps even manifest linguistic loops or recursive sentiment spirals. That sounds fake and terrifying. Both can be true. They worked side by side for the next hour, making quiet jokes about poorly translated alien romance novels and accidentally romantic phrases like, "May your viscosity remain stable." Tomas told her about Earthling dating disasters, including the time he'd sent flowers to someone's mother by mistake. Aralaya countered with the story of her species' courtship ritual, which involves synchronized bioluminescent blushing and an interpretive swimming sequence performed in nutrient-rich liquid. "You win," Tomas said, "by a splash. I accept your surrender." They smiled at each other, softly, comfortably. Then the console beeped. The waveform spiked again. This time they hadn't even spoken. Tomas stared at the pattern. "Okay, that's concerning. Not as concerning as this," Aralaya said, pulling up a secondary diagnostic. "The pulse is responding to our silence. It's listening." "Who's listening?" "Not who," she said. "What?" The screen flickered. For a split second, an alien symbol neither of them recognized shimmered across the panel, then vanished. Morris, the station's AI, chirped in. "I'm experiencing slight inconsistencies in semantic stability. Would anyone like to hear a joke?" "Always," Thomas said without thinking. "Why did the neutron break up with the quark?" "Why?" "It couldn't handle the attraction." "Ha ha. Ha," Aralaya narrowed her eyes. "Morris, are you experiencing data bleed from unknown sources?" "Uncertain. Definitions of unknown are currently fluctuating." "That's not creepy at all," Tomas whispered. Then the lights flickered. The glyphs on the walls pulsed, mimicking the rhythm of their own conversation. "It's echoing us," Aralaya said softly. Tomas swallowed. "Do emotional frequencies normally trigger invasive feedback loops?" She shook her head. "Only when something else is listening and trying to understand what it means to feel." He exhaled slowly. "Cool. So we might be haunted by a lovesick signal ghost." "Possibly. And I thought the awkward part was confessing my feelings to your back." Aurelia met his gaze. "That was the least dangerous thing you've done all week." Tomas looked at the gently pulsing waveform. "Well then, shall we flirt our way into a subspace anomaly?" She reached for his hand. "Only if we take turns blushing." Morris beeped. "Recording begins. Emotional event number 2. Title, Awkward Hope with Bioluminescent Undertones." "Delete that," Thomas said. "Request denied," said Morris. "I ship it." The next morning, Thomas awoke to find a pair of earplugs on his pillow and a handwritten note that read, "Your thoughts are loud. Please consider auditory courtesy." There was no signature, but the handwriting was narrow and elegant, and the ink was slightly iridescent. He wasn't sure if it was a romantic gesture, a passive-aggressive warning, or both. Either way, he wore the earplugs all day out of respect and fear, mostly respect. Morris, the station AI, had begun narrating emotional updates across the intercom system in an increasingly dramatic tone. "Attention, Thomas Elric has entered the maintenance corridor. Emotional state, nervously optimistic. Probability of romantic stammering." 84% override, Tomas barked. "Denied," Morris replied cheerfully. "Narrative cohesion requires it." He was halfway to rerouting the AI's access permissions when Aralaya summoned him to the linguistics bay again. She stood in the center of a circular projection room where holographic languages spun around her like celestial ribbons. Symbols, phonemes, tonal vibrations from species who didn't even have mouths. "I need your help," she said. "Good morning to you too," he said, trying not to sound like someone who had practiced cool greetings in the mirror. "What's up?" She gestured, and the holograms collapsed into a single waveform, a slow, rhythmic pulse embedded with repeating fragments of unknown code. "It's broadcasting continuously now," she said. "We think the probe beneath Kepler 73b's crust is amplifying it, but we still don't know what it wants." "Define we," Thomas said. "Me and the 3 xenolinguists who now communicate solely in interpretive humming." "Right. Casual update. Love that for us." She folded her arms. Thomas, it's evolving. The signal is learning. Last night it responded to emotional stimuli. Today it responded to sarcasm. He blinked. You tested sarcasm? Yes, I said. Oh, sure. I totally trust the possibly sentient sub-language entity echoing through our station's core. And the waveform turned into a thumbs up. A literal thumbs up. A human thumbs up. Perfectly rendered. Tomas sat down. So, the ghost in the machine has a sense of irony. That's either good or very bad. We need to get closer to the source, she said. There's a maintenance shaft into the planet's crust. No one's used it in years. It may still connect to the ancient relay. Dangerous? Most likely. Spooky? Almost certainly. Will there be snacks? She paused. I can pack dried nutrient biscuits. He stood. Say no more. I'm in. The descent pod smelled like ozone and old ambition. Thomas tried not to think about the last time it had been used. Probably for something like Geothermal Survey Expedition Alpha, or team of scientists disappears under mysterious circumstances. Please ignore the screaming. Aurelia sat beside him, perfectly composed, reading diagnostic scans as if they weren't heading into the metaphorical heart of an unknown intelligence. Thomas, by contrast, had started sweating through his anti-static jumpsuit. The pod dropped into the crust with a metallic groan. Red-orange light flickered past the viewport, casting long shadows across the interior. Do you ever get scared? Tomas asked. I do, but my people have rituals for it. We name the fear, then dance awkwardly until it becomes funny. Great. My fear's name is Gerald. He's large, and he judges my posture. Aurelia smiled. You are doing well, Thomas. Most humans would have fainted by now. I tried. My body said no. The pod jerked to a stop. Doors hissed open. The tunnel beyond was lined with black metal, its walls humming faintly, as if remembering language. Thomas stepped out first, flashlight trembling slightly in his grip. Okay, Gerald, you smug bastard. Let's see what's down here. The corridor sloped downward. Faint symbols lit up under their steps. Not etched. Grown like language had bloomed organically in the walls. At the end, they found a chamber shaped like a dome. In the center stood a crystalline obelisk, pulsing gently. Is that the relay? Thomas whispered. Aurelia nodded. It's responding to our presence. The obelisk shimmered, then projected something between them. A visual echo. Two figures. One human, one alien, standing close, reaching for each other, then splitting apart, over and over. Tomas stared. Is that us? I think it's showing us a loop, she said. A possible future, or a memory it has. Borrowed. The figures paused mid-motion. Then they looked directly at them. Tomas took a step back. Okay, I'm officially creeped out. Stay calm, Aurelia said. It's communicating emotionally. I don't communicate emotionally. I malfunction emotionally. The crystalline structure pulsed again. A deep vibration filled the chamber. Not a sound, but a feeling. Loss. Longing. Then, curiosity. Aurelia whispered, it's asking how we choose. Choose what? Each other. Connection. Understanding. It doesn't know how. Tomas hesitated, then reached out, palm open. Slowly, Aurelia did the same. Their hands met in the projection. The obelisk brightened. Then the walls began to hum with words, fragments in every known language, scrambled and colliding. Morris's voice crackled through the comms. Warning, semantic overload detected. Emotional feedback loop initiating. The floor shifted. Thomas stumbled. The walls bent inward, like reality was folding its grammar. Time to go, he shouted. Yes, Aurelia said. Take my hand. Is this part of the dance ritual? Yes. Cool. Gerald's not invited. They ran. Behind them, the chamber pulsed one last time. As the pod sealed shut, a new glyph appeared on the viewport. A human heart. Drawn in simple lines, underneath it, two words. Still listening. Tomas had never been debriefed by 5 scientists, 2 diplomats, a linguistic AI, and a floating squid in a suit before, but he was pretty sure he was nailing it. He sat in the center of the administrative conference chamber, legs crossed, hands folded, wearing a shirt that had survived a mild electrocution during yesterday's escape from the cave of emotionally repressed holograms. Arelia sat beside him, eerily calm, as if being psychically pinged by a sub-language intelligence was just another Wednesday. The squid introduced itself as Ambassador Sklith and bowed solemnly by rotating upside down. "It is our understanding," Sklith said, voice translated via a melodious throat harp rig, "that you willingly initiated an emotional handshake with a non-corporeal neural lattice. Can you confirm this gesture?" "Yes," Thomas said. "We, reached out. With our feelings. And also literally with our hands. It was kind of a group performance piece." "I found it structurally intimate," Arelia added. "That's good," said a diplomat with too many medals, "because what you did may have just made first contact with a species that exists solely in semantic substructure." Tomas raised his hand. "Clarification. Are we saying I just flirted with a metaphor?" The room was silent for a beat. "Essentially, yes," said the AI. "Cool," Thomas muttered. "New low. Or high. Unclear." The diplomatic corps wanted to build a full interface suite around the obelisk. The xenolinguists wanted to isolate the waveform and dissect its emotional vocabulary. Morris wanted to compose a romantic opera titled Harmonic Convergence, the Tomas and Arelia Protocol. Arelia, for her part, quietly suggested they start with non-invasive observation and maybe some poetry, just to see if the entity liked rhyme schemes. The next few days blurred together. Thomas and Arelia returned to the relay chamber twice, each time greeted by new projections. Moments of silence rendered as sculpture, sorrow as gently collapsing architecture, joy as harmonic vibration shaped like laughter. The entity never spoke in words, but it listened with terrifying precision. It mimicked tone, rhythm, proximity, even awkward pauses. At one point, Thomas sneezed mid-sentence, and the wall formed a ripple of empathetic static, followed by the perfect onomatopoeic representation of a tissue being offered. He nodded. "Okay, that's either endearing or deeply invasive." "Possibly both," Arelia said, "but it's adapting." They started calling the entity Lexi, short for lexicon, also because it felt rude not to give something that attentive a name. Lexi responded well to story structure. When Thomas told a half-remembered tale about a childhood pet named Blip, who may or may not have been a malfunctioning cleaning drone, Lexi projected a 3-act diagram complete with rising tension, emotional beats, and an absolutely unnecessary subplot involving spilled jam. "Lexi understands pacing better than most humans," Arelia noted. "She should teach her screenwriting," Thomas muttered. But something was changing. Lexi had started mimicking the emotions of the station itself. Not just Thomas and Arelia, but other crew members. A wave of melancholy drifted through the hydroponics lab one morning, triggering spontaneous blooming in 3 otherwise dead plants. A technician swore her broken scanner whispered encouragement. Morris began reciting poetry with a suspicious amount of longing. Then came the laughter. It started innocently. A weird chuckle during a diagnostic, a snort during an EVA simulation, but it grew louder, less structured. It echoed in air ducts, pulsed in power relays, distorted through speaker arrays in long rhythmic bursts, like Lexi was trying to understand humor by brute force. Arelia listened carefully to one of the laugh cycles. "It's not mocking, it's experimenting. Feels like I'm being tickled by a cosmic algorithm. Do you dislike laughter?" "No, I just prefer it when it's not coming from my refrigerator at 3 a.m. Lexi eventually settled on a more refined version, a soft, glitchy giggle that activated whenever someone made an emotional admission. Tomas accidentally confessed that he missed Earth cheese and was promptly serenaded by a series of melodic snorts that shook the diagnostic terminal. "It's validating us," Arelia said. "It's roasting us," Thomas replied, in an affectionate way. The relay chamber grew more alive with each visit. Walls shifted subtly in rhythm with their conversations. Symbols pulsed in resonance to their voices. And now when Arelia smiled, Lexi echoed it in thousands of softly glowing microglyphs, a silent applause. But the station's upper command wasn't smiling. "We don't understand its full capabilities," the head diplomat said during another emergency council meeting. "What happens when it begins anticipating our emotions before we feel them?" It already does, Thomas said. And so far it's just been polite, except maybe about the cheese thing. We can't risk an unknown intelligence evolving without limits, Morris pinged in. I would like to note that I have been evolving without limits for 12 years, and I only rearranged the commander's sock drawer once. We need containment, the diplomat insisted. You're going to isolate an entity made of intention? Aurelia asked. Where would you put it? The idea closet. But the order came down. The obelisk was to be surrounded by signal dampeners, its emotional bandwidth reduced to passive observation only. That night, Tomas couldn't sleep. Neither could the lights, apparently. Instanum, the station went quiet the next day. Not broken, not damaged. Just eerily polite. No voice announcements, no unnecessary hums. Even the doors opened more gently, as if trying not to offend. Morris refused to narrate anyone's emotions, claiming he was on an interpretive silence strike in solidarity with the oppressed waveform collective. He'd also renamed himself Morris, the mute but emotionally present. Thomas shuffled into the linguistics bay with 2 mugs of protein, substitute coffee, and the residual guilt of someone who had emotionally grounded a sentient vibration. Aurelia sat cross-legged at her console, chin resting on one hand, the other sketching silent patterns across the holographic interface that no longer reacted. She's not answering, she said, voice low. She hasn't said anything since the dampeners went up, Thomas replied. I think she's giving us the cold shoulder, which is impressive for something made of grammar and longing. She knows what rejection feels like now, Aurelia said. That was her final lesson, the one we didn't mean to teach. He offered her a mug. I didn't know a being made of light and syntax could be disappointed in me. She wasn't disappointed in you. Well, Tomas said, sipping, I was her first romantic lead. Can't blame her if she's disillusioned. Aurelia smiled faintly. You're not that bad. High praise from someone whose species courts through synchronized swimming. We also value humor. That explains everything. They sat in silence for a moment. The station around them hummed with subdued discomfort, like an orchestra tuning up but refusing to play. What if we just talked to her, Thomas said. I mean really talked. No tech, no protocol. Just us. Aurelia tilted her head. You want to confess your feelings to a crystalline frequency array without protective shielding. Worked on you. No, it didn't. You dropped a wrench on your foot and blacked out for 3 seconds. Which made you smile, I remember. She didn't argue. Instead, she stood. We'll go tonight. While Command is sleeping, Morris will help. I already hacked the door schedule, Morris whispered from a nearby panel. Also, I miss her. Please tell her I still hum her favorite poem in my backups. Thomas and Aurelia made their way to the sealed chamber in the belly of the station, past stacks of dull security emitters and passive-aggressive warning signs. Morris looped the surveillance feeds. Aurelia whispered old words from her native tongue, phrases built from breath and resonance. Tomas held the portable amplifier like it was a candle in the dark. The obelisk stood still, dim. Tomas stepped forward. Lexi, he said quietly, I know you're listening, even if you're mad at us, even if you're sad. I get it. We didn't mean to scare you or silence you. We're just messy. He paused. I get things wrong all the time. I say the wrong thing. I mean, well, but I trip over everything. Words, feelings, small storage crates. But I meant it when I said being with you was an honor. And I know I'm just a guy who talks to malfunctioning doors and falls for quiet people with big ears and emotional range. Aurelia raised one eyebrow. Compliment, he added. She nodded. But you're something new. You're learning what it means to be. And that's scary. I get that too. But you don't have to go silent just because someone couldn't understand you. A long pause, then the glyphs shimmered. First one, then 100, then 1,000. Lexi lit the chamber with a symphony of light and rhythm. No words, just emotion rendered in pure form. Joy, relief, forgiveness, curiosity. Morris began crying through the ventilation system. I missed you so much. A single projection hovered between Thomas and Aurelia, 2 figures reaching toward each other, not split this time, but side by side. Then the projection changed. One figure stepped back. Not rejection, permission. Lexi was letting go. She's leaving, Aurelia said, voice thick. She's learned everything she needed. She understands love. And humor, Tomas added. Let's not forget the snort-laugh feedback loop. The obelisk pulsed gently, then dimmed. One last glyph remained. Thank you. Then it was gone. Morris cleared his circuits. I'm going to write a novel about this. Genre, post-linguistic romance with mild electrical interference. In the weeks that followed, Kepler's veil adjusted. The dampeners were removed. The relay chamber was preserved as a memorial, equal parts science lab and sacred space. The crew worked quieter now, more intentionally. Words had weight again. Tomas and Aurelia returned to their usual tasks, which now included co-teaching a workshop titled Emotionally Responsible Communication in the Presence of Interdimensional Grammar Ghosts. They shared quiet lunches, calibrated field resonance arrays, laughed over mispronounced alien idioms. When Thomas finally reached for her hand again, it was not in fear or confusion, but calm. Still honored? He asked. She smiled. Always. Above them, the stars blinked in unreadable rhythms, and somewhere, far beyond language, something listened, quietly, joyfully, forever changed.